Welcome back to the Sportsbook Draft, where FanDuel's pick is in.
With the first pick in the 2025 Sportsbook Draft, FanDuel selects the Kentucky Derby.
Brilliant pick, as FanDuel becomes the first sportsbook app where you can bet the Derby.
Just a savvy move by a savvy franchise. New customers get a no-sweat first bet on the Kentucky Derby up to $500.
It's like they know each other.
What do you think Rob's saying to him right now?
Probably something about oats.
Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike B are here taking a look at one of the Grade 1 events on the Kentucky Derby undercard this Saturday at Churchill Downs. Race 10 is the Grade 1 Derby City Distaff, going the 7 furlong distance for fillies and mares. This race and all of our analysis of the Kentucky Derby races this weekend is presented by FanDuel, and our friends at FanDuel do have a promotion going on this week for new customers. You can get a no-sweat first bet if you sign up for a new account at FanDuel. You can make that bet up to $500, and if it wins, it's great for you, but if you don't win, you get that money right back into your account as a racing bonus for you to keep on playing. So find out more about that at the FanDuel website or on the app. Also, there's a lot of interesting races to handicap this Oaks Friday and Kentucky Derby Saturday at Churchill Downs. And you want to start your handicapping early and do so with one of these Kentucky Derby packages where you don't just get the past performances. Also included are the betting strategies. I'll be writing those with Marcus Hirsch, the player's guide where you get picks for all the DRF talent, insights into the runners in the Derby and more, and clock reports from Mike Welsh and his team to get a sense of how these runners are doing for all of the races on Oaks Friday and Derby Saturday heading into this weekend. Find out more about these packages where you can save up to 39% of the value on everything included at shop.drf.com. Well, Mike, another big field signed on for one of these races leading into the Kentucky Derby. Not quite 20 horses, but I think we've got, 16 entered in this Derby City Distaff. Only 14 will go in the main body of the field. And this one came up like a preview of the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, because almost all of the major players in this older female sprint division are entered here. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how this one plays out.
I agree. This feels like a real war in here. There are so many good horses in this race, and I understand that some of them, off layoffs here, and we're going to have something. Some of the other ones who had prior good form have something to prove now, maybe to see if they're still as good as they used to be. But man, it's just another race on this card that it feels like a lot of different horses can win.
It really does. I mean, I wouldn't want to make a morning line for this race. I'll be interested to see how they bet it. It feels like Ways and Means has to take money for the connection she goes out for. Copian has been so impressive since coming back for her 4-year-old campaign, and I feel like she's got to pull in some support in here, but we'll see who ultimately does go favored in this Derby City Distaff. Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector to get a sense of how these runners could sort themselves out moving down the backstretch and into that far turn at Churchill Downs. And Mike, I'm going to be really interested to see not just who finds themselves on the lead, but who ends up running in this race, especially among some of the speeds, because you'll note while Hall and Ice is shown leading on the pace projector, she goes out for the exact same connections as the number 6 Mystic Lake. They both are kind of need the lead types of horses that want to be forward. And I wonder if the connections are going to actually run both of them. But if they do, and even if one of them scratches, it feels like this pace has to heat up.
Yeah, I agree. It does feel like this pace has to be fast. I mean, those, you're right, they're stablemates, but they have run against each other a couple of times in the past. So it'll be interesting to see if they try it again here. They're both going to be forward in here. There are obviously other horses that could go. I feel like, the pace projector has the 2 Copian kind of mid-pack. She's got real easy speed, David. I'd be surprised if she was too far away.
And I'll just note, if there is a scratch in this race, the number 15 Grand Job would work into this field. And I was looking up the Timeform US early pace ratings. She would be shown second on this pace projector if the number 15 Chicklet was on there. So just another horse to add to what could potentially be an honest early pace. Let's go through this field from the rail out, beginning with the number 1 Sila. And Mike, this is a horse that showed a lot of talent right from the beginning of her career. The connections had high hopes for this one, primarily going longer around 2 turns in some dirt routes last year. didn't quite pan out, disappointed in a couple of races. They turned her back in distance in the Ballerina last summer, and she ran pretty well to finish second behind Society, who can be really tough to beat in this division when she's on her game. They then brought her back in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. Let's take a look at the stretch run of that race, and it was a wild finish. All horses just strung across the track at the top of the stretch. Sila was wide every step of the way, and when you factor the ground loss in, it's probably fair to say that she ran one of the best races in here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's a really good performance for her. They just got way more aggressive with her at the Breeders' Cup, and it obviously cost her in this race. I wonder if it was how much of a response that was to the Ballerina, David, because I don't know about you. I hated the way that they rode her in that race. That I understand the Society is a pretty good horse on her best day. That pace was super slow, and Castellano was just content to sit there and wait, and it really cost them because Society was just sprinting through the stretch of that race, and she had no chance. I don't know. I like pretty much everything about her. You know, she has to be ready off the layoff here, and I know that she was supposed to run, I think, at Keeneland and then didn't. Yeah. I'm not sure what's up with that, so that bothers me a little bit, but she's a major player in here.
Yeah, she had a minor setback that week. It looks like she missed a couple of work, so that's not ideal coming back off this kind of layoff, but it does seem like she at least had been training well before and after that. So we'll see what kind of performance Sila can fire off the layoff. The number 2 is Copian, and like she's 8-1 on the morning line, but I feel like if we're just basing our assessment of her on the last couple of races, there's the argument that she should be the favorite in this race. And we'll take a look at her most recent effort in the Santa Monica. This was following up her upset victory in the La Brea off the layoff, where she was sort of an unbelievable 37-1 that day. She wasn't anywhere near that price when she came back for the Santa Monica, and she was only beating 3 rivals, but they're 3 pretty good rivals, Mike. And the 3rd and 4th place finishers from this race have since come back to validate the 110 buyer that Copian achieved this day. And if you just isolate her one-turn sprint races, she's won every time and looked like a real star in the making. So, I mean, she seems like the one to beat.
That's how I looked at it too. Well, you just kind of go through this race, and then I saw the morning line, and you're just kind of praying that you actually get that kind of a price on her. Her sprints they're not only fast, particularly last year, they're really impressive. I mean, you're right. You're right about the La Brea. I don't know why they dismissed her that day, but they did, and she just won that race as easy as could be. Was even better last time. I do think she's the horse to beat in here.
And she has really been working great into this race. There was a plan to run her in the Beholder Mile, and you can see she had a minor illness. She missed, I think, 1 workout in early April, so that's why she didn't run in that race. But rebounded to this spot doesn't make it easy, but this is the right distance for her. The number 3 is Benedetta. She's going to be one of the biggest prices in this race. And Mike, she was no match for Hall and Ice last time at Oaklawn Park. She's never really run a speed figure that makes her as good as some of the top players in here. And I wonder if the 7 furlongs is just a little tad too far for her.
Yeah, I'm worried about that too. I just more than this distance though. I'm just worried about the competition here. She's a pretty nice horse, but I don't know that she's this kind of horse.
The number 4, Awesome Treat, is cross-entered in the Unbridled Sydney on Oaks Friday. That might be a better spot for her, Mike, just because it's an easier race. Not that it's an easy spot for her, but she is more of a synthetic turf type. She's just never been competitive on the dirt.
Yeah, I don't think that that's an easy spot for her either, but they should probably run her in the other race. I don't see how she could beat these horses.
The number 5, Hall and Ice, was that horse that was shown leading on the Timeform US Pace Projector, and based on her last couple of races, I get it. She's busted out of the gate and gone to the front, setting clear leads every time, and just has drawn off from those fields. We'll take a look at the most recent of those, the Matron at Oaklawn Park. This was over a muddy sealed track, but Mike, she was beating a horse that at one time looked like she might be really talented in this division, Almost Gone Rocket, who was second. And now maybe she hasn't gone forward after missing a lot of time last year, but still, Hall and Ice ran a fast 101 buyer on this day. She is one that has to prove a couple of things: that she can be as effective at 7 furlongs, and also that she could run a big race outside of Oaklawn Park.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, she's really has run some nice races since Safi Joseph has taken over. I mean, you don't always get a top performance out of her, but her good race is actually pretty good. I don't love the fact that she does seem like a horse who's at her best when she's up there and being part of the pace. And I don't love that trip for her against these horses because, fast race or not last time, she's stepping way up in class here.
her stablemate Mystic Lake is drawn right to her outside, and that's probably a good position for Mystic Lake if they're going to run both of these horses, because she's got a little more versatility. She can sit off a rival and still run a big race like she did 3 back in the Sugar Squirrel. And Mike, she's just generally pretty consistent. She is pace dependent. If they go too quickly up front, it's going to be a problem for her. And she has been a horse that has been somewhat opportunistic when she's achieved some of her best victories. It's been when she can get loose on the lead. I didn't really see the excuse for her last time in the Madison, where I didn't feel the pace was all that fast, and she just couldn't quite stick with some rivals that she's meeting again here.
Yeah, I agree. I was disappointed in her Madison last time, and she certainly wasn't the horse that I wanted out of that race. She's obviously run better races than that in the past, and so if you want to be forgiving there, that's fine with me. But I really didn't want to be. She's another one. I thought she would maybe need to run the race of her life to get a piece of this.
Mike, one of the toughest calls in this race might be the number 7, Vava, because you know that when she's at her best, she can win a race like this. She actually won this race last year with a career best 103 buyer, looking like she was the new leader of this division. And she maintained that status right up until the fall, where it seemed like she just tailed off a little bit. Cherie DeVoe has said in the press that she doesn't believe this filly or this mare really likes Saratoga. So you're willing to use that as an excuse maybe for the Ballerina 2 back. But boy, she was really bad in the Breeders' Cup, and we saw her at the end of last season, Mike. She just never looked like a winner that day, was never involved in the race, and you do kind of have to wonder if now at age 5, if she's going to recapture that best form from early in her career.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just, I have to take a wait and see approach with her now, especially against a field as strong as this one coming back. You mentioned how good she was in this race last year, but she was also in great form at that time. And for whatever reason, she totally lost it at the end of last year.
The number 8, Ways and Means, merits real respect in this race because she's just run nothing but good races around one turn. The Kentucky Oaks last year, simply too far for her. She didn't even run that badly that day, dueling towards the front end with Torpedo Anna. Since then, she's won 3 of 4, all around one turn. The Grade 1 test winner last summer, where she beat a couple of these same rivals who she's meeting here. She was also in that Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint replay that we took a look at for Sila. While she wasn't as wide as that foe, Mike, she did have to make an early move between horses to sort of get herself up into a spot where she could strike. And it seemed like that detracted from her finish a little bit. Still, I found her a little disappointing as the favorite, but it's clear that on her best day, she could certainly win a race like this.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with any of that stuff. But she is going to, a horse is going to take money in here. I think I'll just say, as far as, my opinion of her goes, I don't think I've ever liked her as much as everybody else has liked her. I don't know. I remember being kind of blown away by her debut, and I don't love necessarily anything else she's done since then. She's just the kind of horse who every time she shows up in a really tough race and she takes a lot of money, I'm happy to try to beat her.
The number 9, Emory, has really been the picture of consistency for trainer Brad Cox. You just always know she's going to come up and show up with a solid effort. Doesn't win all the time, and I find it a little problematic, Mike, that she didn't get the job done now twice in a row in spots where it looked like she was supposed to be able to beat those fields. In both the inside information, where she was right on top of the pace set by Mystic Lake and couldn't get by that horse. And then last time in the Madison, where the pace wasn't that fast. And again, she was dueling Mystic Lake. And while she passed her, she got run down by Positanado Sunset. And we'll get to in a little bit, a horse that on paper looked like she was supposed to be able to beat. So I think she's good. I expect her to run well, be somewhere in the trifecta or superfecta, but I don't know if I really want it better at a short price.
Yeah, I think we both have the same opinion of her. As a 3-year-old, I just felt like she was good, and I was expecting her to really move forward this year as a 4-year-old and be a huge player in this sprint division. And I'm starting to wonder now if that's going to happen. She hasn't run poorly in her first 2 starts, but she hasn't run great either. And she's going to obviously have to run a really, really good race to beat this field.
The number 10, Darth Vader, is another horse that's cross-entered in this race, as well as the La Troyenne on Friday, going a little bit longer, where she'd have to face Torpedo Anna. I'm not sure which spot would be easier for her. Mike, she is a horse that showed some talent going back to her 3-year-old season. She's just had no momentum since then because she's had so much time away from the races, a big layoff between 2023 and 2024, then another layoff after that one start last year. It's hard to really trust her at this point in her career.
I agree. And also, I'm not sure if longer is better for her or if shorter is better for her. I feel like I could argue both sides of that. I don't mind them. I wouldn't mind it anyway if they decided to try to cut her back this year and run in some shorter races. If you wanted to, be lenient for the race off the left. Obviously, it's a really long layoff anyway in that most recent start, but she also just didn't really break great in that race. Bumped hard at the start, and so they just sort of had to take a hold of her. There was no pace in that race. I thought she ran fine.
The number 11 Positano Sunset was the upset winner of the Madison that we've already mentioned a couple of times, the prior grade 1 in this division. Let's take a look at the stretch run of that race. And Mike, she got a really good ride from Julia Leperoux this day, who kept her covered up in behind the leaders early, finds this split in mid-stretch, is able to come right on through between horses to ultimately win this race, going away at the end. The horses that she's beating here include Emory, Mystic Lake, and My Main Squeeze, who we'll get to in just a little bit. Mike, going back to her form from last year, it's not like this came from completely out of nowhere, because she was only beaten by a length and a quarter to Vava in that Chicago going back to last summer. I mean, she was right there at the end of the Ballerina, only again a length and a half behind Vava on that day. Then they tried to go longer with her. She doesn't want to do that. And Ian Wilkes has been quoted as saying that when she came back into his barn this winter in Florida, it's like she was a completely transformed horse, and he was not surprised by the victory last time. So are we maybe not supposed to underestimate her once again?
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, obviously, you're right. I like the way that you laid out, too. Like, she was okay last year, even though you're not looking at a bunch of wins on her card. She went 0 for 7. She was also a horse who the year prior, as a 3-year-old, to me, I remember at that time thinking, this horse has a chance to be really good as an older horse. And I think it's finally coming true for her. Obviously, you know, maybe last time would have been the time to have her against a little bit of an easier field. I'm not going to be surprised if she runs well again.
Yeah, you'll see. I didn't put her in my picks. I thought long and hard about it, but I ultimately went with the what you said. I just feel like I missed the boat on her last time out. The number 12 is Hope Road, and she was a distant second to Copian when they met in the Santa Monica last time, as well as when she was fourth behind her in the La Brea 2 back at Santa Anita. Mike, this horse obviously has talent. She's run some nice speed figures that put her in the mix here. She's a Bob Baffert trainee that he deems fit to run in this race, which I think in and of itself is somewhat meaningful, because Bob typically doesn't send horses to big days like this for them to be big prices and get nothing. I just feel like she would need to run better to turn the tables on the horse that's been beating her out in California.
Yeah, absolutely. Based on the last 2 meetings with Copian, she can't beat that horse unless something happens. We'll see if that's the case. She is pretty good though. And, you know, she's obviously going to be a way bigger price than Copian, regardless of what the morning line says at this point, she's going to be a way bigger price.
Mike, when I was watching back that Madison, I felt like if I wanted to take anybody out of that race, it's the number 13, My Main Squeeze, because she had a couple things working against her there. She was the one that was coming off a layoff, whereas some others had preps coming into that race, like the winner, Positano Sunset. And also, she was just really wide, trying to make this 4-wide blitz around the far turn. And she got there at the top of the stretch like she was potentially going to win the race. And then you could see that the ground loss kind of caught up with her at the end, and she couldn't quite finish through the final furlong. That was her 4-year-old debut. Horses always have that right to take a step forward from 3 to 4. And I think we saw some subtle signs towards the end of last season that she was starting to progress. I believe that she might have been the best horse in the Raven Run to conclude her 2024 campaign, because I know Emory won that race, but that was kind of a merry-go-round affair where nobody changed position except for My Main Squeeze, who made that big run from the back of the pack. And now she lands in a race where it feels like there's a ton of pace signed on. She's drawn outside as a horse that wants to make that wide run. And I could really envision her getting the right trip in here.
I agree with all that stuff. I mean, I think we look at her kind of the exact same way, David. I mean, out of the Madison last time, she was the one I wanted out of that race. She was in my opinion, a really underrated 3-year-old last year. Maker threw everything at her as a 3-year-old last year, ran her in all different races, and she acquitted herself well every single time. She's a supremely underrated horse.
The number 14 Tax is going to be a huge price if she runs in here. She's another one that's cross-entered in that La Troyenne on Oaks Friday. Mike, on one hand, I kind of like the spot better for her because I think that she deserves a chance to try to be a dirt sprinter, and they've gone long with her so many times. And I actually think she's better around one turn, especially getting some pace to close into. I just don't see her as a grade 1 level horse.
Yeah, I don't think this is the spot for her, but I agree with you. They've given her a chance to be, a stakes, a graded stakes kind of routing horse, and it's not going to happen for her. They got to try this.
Mike, I do want to discuss the number 15, Grand Job, who is the first also eligible entrant, and she would get in with one potential scratch in this race. She has been really good since she came over to this country for trainer Bill Mott, a daughter of Justify, who had competed on different surfaces over in Europe to begin her career. We'll take a look at her most recent start when she was winning a high-level optional claiming allowance race at Gulfstream, and she got away with some easy splits in here, but just check out how easily she wins this race. Joel Rosario is just basically kind of a statue in the stirrups, asks her a couple of times and just lets her do it under her own power. I didn't like that they tried to go longer with her too back in the Royal Delta. I think she's a sprinter. They're just biting off a pretty big piece of this division if they're going to try a race like this.
I agree, but she deserves the chance, though, to run in one. Maybe it's not this one, but she deserves a chance to start running in these races down the line. She's been really, really impressive around one turn.
Well, before we get to our picks, I want to remind everybody that FanDuel is presenting this video, and FanDuel has a promotion going on this week for new customers. You can get that no sweat first bet of up to $500, and if it loses, you get that right back into your account as a racing bonus. Mike, let's go to our picks for this Derby City Distaff, and I think we both have a lot of respect for that California shipper. The number 2, Copian, who just seems like the horse to beat.
Yeah, that's how I looked at it too. I'm not expecting 8-1, but I like this spot for her. I think she's really good, and I decided to put her on top in this race. Sila is definitely a horse I want to use here, despite some questions for sure. I have your top pick in there. My main squeeze. I think she's going to run really well in here. I'm against Ways and Means.
I think that Copian is the most likely winner, and as long as she works at any kind of trip, I think she's going to be awfully tough for this field to beat. I just feel that my main squeeze is the one horse that's going to be double-digit odds that I could make a really strong case for, especially if the pace heats up. So 13-2-8-1 for me, and 2-1, 13-9 for Mike in a race 10 on Kentucky Derby Saturday at Churchill Downs. It's the Grade 1 Derby City Distaff. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.